everybody! Today I'm going to walk you through dissecting a flower. Now, for you to dissect a flower, it shouldn't be too hard. You're only going to need a few things, and they're probably stuff that you already have around the house. So let's take a look at what we need to get before we get started. First thing you're going to want is a flower. So I have a flower right here. I'll kind of move it close so everybody can see. This flower is called a fairy iris, and it might be pretty easy to find around your neighborhood. A lot of people grow them because they're very beautiful to look at. But really any kind of big flower is going to be good for an experiment like this. You want one that's going to have lots of spread out petals, lots of stuff going on the inside. A really teeny flower will still have the flower parts that we're looking for, but they won't be as easy for us to dissect. So make sure you get a flower, and make sure that if you're getting it from not your yard, you ask permission from the people that live there. You don't want to be stealing their flowers and getting them upset. The other things you're probably going to want to have: a pair of tweezers, which you might have around your house. They don't have to be super fancy or super nice. These are just kind of like cheapo tweezers that I had at home. And then also a pair of scissors. I have a pair of really cute tiny scissors from a little sewing kit, but even big scissors can work as well. But the smaller the better, so if you have little scissors, that's going to be great. And then I also made a little data sheet for myself. So nothing fancy, I just wrote out the names of the parts that we're going to be looking for today: the petals, the stamen, and the pistil, and I wrote them down so that we can look at it later and kind of spread out our flower as we take it apart. But now that we have everything, let's get started. So you can see my little flower. I've got my tools at the ready, plus my little sheet right here to put the pieces that we collect. So we're going to start by taking apart the petals of your flower. So we've got some pretty obvious petals on this guy, and your flower probably has some as well. What you're going to want to do is just very gently remove them. Don't pull too hard. You don't want them to rip. We want to try to keep the petal intact. Now, can y'all think of why a flower needs petals in the first place? Any guesses? It's going to help us make more flowers. You can see I'm laying my petals down under the petal set of my worksheet. There we go. There's another one. So flowers need to be able to make more flowers, right? But can flowers walk around? So they can't exactly go walk over to a neighbor. Flowers are going to rely on things we call pollinators to help spread their pollen from flower to flower and keep growing new flowers. So petals like these ones, if they're nice and pretty like these ones are, they've got these little markings down the center. Some of the petals have this beautiful yellow stuff down the middle, almost like a signal to the pollinators, like, hey, you need to come here, come towards the middle of the flower. Pollinators are going to respond well to that sort of thing, and people do as well. Not that we're pollinating these flowers on our own, but, we like to plant the pretty flowers, don't we? So now this is a little different looking of a flower. We took away all of the petals. And you might say, wait, what about these? Aren't these petals as well? In the case of my flower, no. So with my flower, these right here are actually something that belong to the female part of the flower. We call the whole female part of the flower the pistil, but we'll get to that later because first I want to talk about something else that we're missing on this flower. When you took off your petals, did anybody have really hard green parts on the outside of theirs? If you did, that means that your flower has something called sepals. My flower right here, the fairy iris, did not have any sepals, but yours might. And the function of the sepal is to help protect the flower when it's really small, when it's still growing. Now let's keep going. Let's see if we can break down our flower here into the two parts that we still have to take, right? I still need to find my stamen and I need to find my pistil. So we'll start with the stamen because that's the boy parts of the flower, the male parts. And they should be easy for you to find. And they'll be easy on my fairy iris as well. So I'm going to hold this up really close. I don't know if you can see, there's this thing that kind of looks like it's on a string or like a piece of thread, and it's got this like fuzzy part on the end. That's going to be your stamen. So I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to really carefully pull off my stamen from the rest of the flower. And this is a good opportunity for you to do that as well. Yours might be bigger, like especially if you have a lily, that's going to be easier for you to find yours, but you might have to look really carefully for them. Now, we have this stamen, and there's actually two parts to it. So the skinny part that we were looking at, the one that I said you should pull on, that's going to be your filament. So you call that part the filament. And then this fuzzy part right up here, this is going to be the anther. This is where the pollen goes. So this is what's holding that pollen that's trying to get to other flowers. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take all of my stamens and I'm going to put them on the right spot in my worksheet. Now you can see my stamens right now, they don't have any pollen on them. So this isn't a plant that's ready to be pollinated, but you can see it would normally have some dusty stuff on it. If you have one that's really dusty, one thing you could do to look at that pollen better, take a piece of clear tape and just stick it, like give it a little tiny kiss against your little anthers, and then see if you can collect any pollen that way. But don't get it too close to your face, it might make you sneeze. All right, I've got my last one that I'm taking right now. Perfect. So you can see my flower had 3. How many did yours have? Very cool. So now I've got our flower down to kind of just the last little bits, right? Now we're at the female part of the flower, which we call the pistil. Now, in your flower, you might not have a part that looks like this, might not be so petaloid like that. That's what we call it, petaloid, when it looks like it's petal, even though it's secretly not. On mine, this is the stigma. So this is the thing that tries to catch all the pollen and funnel it down into the rest of the flower. Sometimes they're sticky. Mine doesn't feel particularly sticky, but that's okay. It still is doing its job. And I'm going to remove these parts, these stigma parts. Again, I'm going to use my tweezers to very carefully take them off. I ripped mine a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to start putting them down in that section for the pistil. And actually, as I'm doing this, I'm getting down into a stickier part. So how cool is that? So I said it didn't feel sticky, but I learned the more I pulled them apart that it did get a little bit sticky. So now we're left with this. And this part doesn't look very exciting at all, but this is where some of the best stuff happens if you're talking about a flower. So in here, we've got the rest of the pistil. So you've got your style, your ovary, and your ovules. Now, we don't have a very big style in this flower. You might in yours. Sometimes you've got your little stigma pieces, and they're up here, and then there might be like a tube that goes down into your ovary, the bigger part. So if you've got one of those tube parts, that's going to be your style. There's not really a major style to look at with my fairy iris. So what we want to do, since this part right here is the ovary, we want to look and see the ovules. So those are going to be the egg cells where you grow a new flower out of, or a seed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break mine off of the stem. So I still had a little bit of stem for my flower, so I'm going to break it off right there. And now I'm going to use my little scissors. We're going to open this up. We're going to see what's inside. So this is something you want to be really careful doing because these are really small, right? You don't want your fingers to get cut. You might need to ask an adult to do this part for you or help you do it. And I'm just very carefully cutting mine in half. And then I'm going to open it up, again, being nice and careful, and I'm going to show it to you. So once you open it up, you can kind of see that there is a little tube at the top. The little tube at the top, that could be part of our style, even though there's not a big one here. And then as I open it up more, I actually see there are little tiny dots in there, and those would be our ovules. So this is a good chance if you have a magnifying glass at home, this is a perfect thing to look at under a magnifying glass. Look at that pollen as well, see if you see any differences. But on mine, it's really kind of neat. You can see almost it looks like little seeds, which makes sense because if we're talking about growing new plants, what would you need to grow them out of? A seed, exactly. So I'm going to put this over with the rest of the parts of my pistil. I'm going to move my camera back up where you can see me. Hopefully you had some fun dissecting a flower together, and go get some more. Go test it out. See if you can find these same types of parts in other sorts of flowers. Go get one of those little flowers that I mentioned and see how it's a lot harder to tell the parts apart. And then take a picture of it. Send it to us at MOSH. Tag us on Facebook or Instagram with what you discover because we would love to see it. Hey Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed learning with me today, and keep an eye out for more exciting content to come through MOSH Connect by visiting themosh.org/educate/connect. All of our content is available to you for free, so if you like activities like mine, please consider donating. Any amount helps and allows us to keep doing what we do.